What do you get when you combine a world-class EMS physician and medical director
I speak pretty good English for a guy from Detroit.
with an EMS veteran and all-around nice guy?
Well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Oh, that's so good. Oh, my God.
Well, you get the EMS Show. Taking it to the people, here's your host, Dr. Ritu Sani and Mike Verkest.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the EMS Show. Mike Verkest, Dr. Ritu Sani, and our special guest, Dr. Jose Cabanas. Gentlemen, happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, Mikey V.
Well, it's the race weekend, right? So I am pumped to go to the Formula One race. In 12 hours, we'll be in the parking lot setting up our tailgate. So I'm beyond yeah, there's Gunther Steiner.
Gunther Steiner t-shirt. Pass. Yes. North Carolina's finest Formula One team.
F1 Racing. The only American team.
That's right. Although Williams is trying really hard to act like they're an American team.
Yeah. They're pretty terrible though, but it's okay. They're better this year.
Well, they have an American driver. He's not very good, but they have an American driver.
No, he does lead the categories in one special area. I don't know if you saw this statistic. I'm,
He's the
into
best
data,
American
right?
driver
We all
in the Formula One right now.
Well, no, besides that, he has caused the most damage to vehicles over the year. He's caused over $21 million in damage to his F1 vehicles.
That's awesome.
That's a little chunk of change.
Yeah, that's a little bit of money, huh?
That's not.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we be a packed crowd in Austin. That's going to be a phenomenal weekend. So I'm glad you're going to.
It will be
enjoying it.
Yeah, it's going to be good, and I'm so excited to announce that next year, Dr. Ritu Sani is coming with me and my son, and we will be together at the Austin race. So I'm very excited. We already got our tickets.
Yep,
we're in.
Oh, ready? A year ahead.
They just came out with
not messing around anymore.
An American Express, general admission cheap seat or something. And Mike texted me a couple days ago, and he's like, "You should come." And I'm like, "It's this weekend." He goes, "No, this is for next year." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I bought my tickets, and it's not just me. The wife is coming too.
Oh, sweet. Oh, good.
Yeah. Because she wakes up on a Monday morning and goes, "It's race week, honey." She likes the Formula One racing. So
it's a great event. I've seen it before. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, you have a little experience out at the Circuit of the Americas, don't you?
I do. As you all know, first of all, thanks so much for having me here in your show tonight. I'm excited to be here. So I was looking forward to getting together this evening. But yeah, as you all know, I did spend some time with our great friends in Austin Travis County as deputy medical director for almost 5 years. So I do remember when Formula One was coming to Austin and sort of the preparation for that initial race and subsequent from that. So it was a great experience. Fantastic people to work with. That event, lots of planning, lots of sort of contingency planning, lots of coordination, it was a great experience and learning opportunity for me in that position. So I know Paul Hinchey and I really enjoy our time there.
Yeah, it is definitely quite the event. So I didn't go last year, but I went the year before in 2021, and there was over 500,000 people over the 3 days at the event. And thankfully the weather was okay, but imagine if it was 100 degrees, right? And I can't even imagine what it's going to be like, but I am excited to go and do a little tour of all the medical facilities tomorrow and check out some of the response plans and all the infield care center, whatever they've got going. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, obviously I'm not keen anymore for how, the sort of the planning purposes, how they're doing it now. I'm sure a lot of lessons learned over the years. So I'm sure they're always refining things, but I got to tell you, it's a lot of work, a lot of, planning, resources, but, Formula One and the whole sort of organization, they don't pull back. They work very closely with folks on the ground, and they want to make sure that everything is sort of everything is sort of lined up for that big day.
When you were involved, I mean, that was you were involved the first year they had it. So
Yeah.
what was it like? I mean, in terms of planning, like, it's one thing I think to go in, like, our friends at Michigan, who have been doing 100,000 people every 7 or 8 Saturdays a year for 50 years versus like, hey, we're going to have this event with 500,000 people in 3 days and over 3 days, and we've never done that before in Austin. I mean, I know that Austin, I mean, University of Texas has a big stadium too, but that just seems like, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah, no, it was very interesting, and it was a lot of learning for a lot of folks, including me, and I know Paul, because as you said, Ritu, it was a new thing that we have never planned for or experienced with. And so certainly I know that obviously the leadership and Austin Travis, and I know Paul and some of our team members were actually in active communication. One of the things that I know Paul did at the time was he communicated with the physician medical directors from other cities across the world who actually had managed Formula One events for a long time. And that was very informative, right? In the sense of trying to think through things that you may not be considering at the time. I do remember we obviously were very sort of thoughtful because it was a new experience. So we were expecting, what do we do if this volume of calls happen? What do we do if we have this circumstances? So it was a lot of contingency planning and trying to manage the allocation of resources. But it was very great experience. I do know that we were surprised about the number of people who wanted, I don't know now, but at the time wanted to travel to the venue and the racetrack by helicopter. So I remember having all these sort of section in Circuit of Americas where helicopters coming from downtown as sort of a ride to folks that I guess preferred to use a helicopter to get to the
fancy people.
I would like to take, if someone who has sat in the traffic for 4 hours leaving, I would like to go by helicopter as well.
Right. So we were like, okay, we're all these landing spots in the city, and how did that changes things? So it was a very unique experience. The other thing that was also interesting, I can't recall if it was the first year or second year. I think it was the first year. Certainly, there's a paper we wrote about the whole planning of that big, first year having in Austin back in the U.S. and you can look it up in PubMed. But one of the things that I remember is that first year, I believe, the race was coming from Abu Dhabi, if I'm not mistaken. So we had a number of folks that presented to the medical team to get evaluated, and they get on to having malaria and other diseases. So you have to think about some international potential sort of conditions that you may not think about when you are typically in your practice here. So those were kind of the unique things, and obviously in addition to the preparation and sort of the attention that an event like Formula One brings to your community. That was very, very educational for me and a lot of folks at the time.
Interesting. Yeah, we have an IndyCar race here in Portland, which I've worked a long time ago. I haven't worked it recently. And when I was an EMS fellow in Pittsburgh, I got to do an IndyCar race I got to work in Mid-Ohio sports car course. But I think the traveling show that is Formula One is just a lot different than IndyCar, especially kind of the international, as you hit it, the international flavor of it.
It was very, very interesting. I do recall, obviously, Circuit of Americas. Obviously, I'm not Austin anymore, but I'm sure it has evolved into this big venue where they do all kinds of events and concerts and other types of events. And one of the things that I remember was the sort of the effect of the audience that or participants of the event sometimes drive the kind of clinical potential conditions or things that may present. So I remember that in Formula One, it was a very unique audience, lots of international travelers and so forth, but the level of presentations around alcohol ingestion or other things was very limited. You did have more heat sort of situations because it was hot, it was the summer, a lot of walking around and so forth. But also earlier later in the summer, and also but at the same venue when we had the X Games, I don't know, I think a year later or so, complete different events happening in the venue. And so it was very interesting to see how different events, same venue, you can have different, you have to prepare for potentially different types of scenarios. And that was very, seeing that sort of in practical application as a physician, EMS medical director, was very interesting.
I'm guessing the relative age in a Formula One event is just a little bit higher than an X Games event.
Yeah.
I mean, but it was very interesting. I mean, and I'm sure, if you talk to Paul, he also has some other unique lessons.
Why would we want to talk to Hinchy about anything? Come on.
You have a different.
And he doesn't listen to the show, so it doesn't really.
We'll send him something so he can look at it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I noticed Samantha Johnson is watching, or at least she swung by enough for her name to swing up on here. She's a host of another podcast. And why can't I think of the name of it? That is the dumbest thing. I produce and edit the podcast. I can't think of it. Why can't I think of it? God, I'm humiliated.
Oh, I can see it. What's up?
She better put it in the chat.
Well, say hi, Samantha. Hi.
What? She's there. Hello. Why? What is going on? I created the logo for it. It's the Standard of Care podcast. Oh my God. Anyway, so she's an attorney, EMS, like she's an attorney, and EMS is her jam, right? Well, one of the first episodes her and Nick did was on event medicine and some of the reviewing cases where kind of things went bad at some of these large events, and I think the potential for something to go bad from a care perspective, humongous at these things, right? Access. Like I think of at CODA specifically, you think of turn one on race day.
Oh yeah,
there's going to be
a lot of
10,000 people on that hill,
there.
right?
Oh,
how do you get to that, right? With all these people, and oh my gosh, it's just a nightmare. So having to plan for that is pretty wild.
And if you're, I mean, we had Ron Roth on as a guest last year,
right,
talking about how the NFL prepares. After the Damar Hamlin cardiac arrest, the NFL let Ron come on our podcast and talk about how they prepare for cardiac arrest on the field. But we also talked about, when I was in Pittsburgh, and one of the great things about it when you do your residency and fellowship in Pittsburgh is you get to be involved in planning for like these NFL games and not just on the field, but all the crowd. I remember too having had at least one cardiac arrest at the stadium, and had a guy who broke his femur walking. It was some crazy stuff. Yeah.
When you have a lot of people, at the levels, Mike was referring to, thousands of people in one location, obviously just per population wise, you're going to have things that are going to occur. Right. Yeah. And obviously, having not only the thinking around the venue and location and operationally, how you manage that and everything else, but also thinking the international sort of aspect of it, in the sense of you may have a pandemic, you may have sort of a flare up of a disease somewhere. So you have to understand sort of these things and be prepared to handle if those things happen in your event, because just all these folks attending from all over, likely you could have something that will pop up.
Interesting.
Yeah. And, with all the things going on in the world now, in the moment, you have a giant, large gathering. I mean, who knows what could go down, right? I mean, that could be anywhere. It could be a football game. It could be, whatever. But
I mean, and a Formula One event on U.S. soil is certainly a big deal. Of course, I'm going to one later this year too. And
yes,
I am in our friend Rob's town. So in Vegas, that's going to be a big, crazy, ridiculously expensive event. But it's
going to be a good time.
It's gonna be a great time. We're gonna have a great time, and I'm
That's
just
the most important thing.
Yeah. I'm just excited. I'm excited to see these races. I love live sports. I'm like Hulu. I don't know. I love live sports.
Well, who knows? I may join you guys next year in Coda. We'll see.
That would be great.
You should.
You'd be
You should.
absolutely. Where's Escott? He should be taking care of us too, right?
Right. We gotta call Mario. Mario, we're coming.
Where's Mark?
Well, we have a little bit of a tradition here on the EMS show / Second Shift, which was our sister,
Our previous
whatever.
incarnation.
Okay.
Our previous incarnation of this is that we have had probably the president of NAEMSP, obviously Ritu. Thank you for your service. But I think we've had everybody since probably 2016.
We had
maybe?
me. We've had Brent.
Okay.
We've had Mike.
Yep.
We didn't have
David
Cohn.
No, David Tan.
Oh, did we have David Tan on?
Did we? I don't know
We
if we
didn't have
did.
Jane
Gosh,
on. We
dang
should
it.
get Jane on. Jane is the best.
Oh yeah, Jane definitely.
Mama Bryce.
Oh,
Where
yeah.
are you? Yes, we should get Mama Bryce on. Talk to us about being a woman chair of an emergency department. Ah, that'd be great. We should do that.
Well, pick up the phone, bro.
Yeah.
You're the plug here. You know all the people.
I do. I know a few people.
Well, why don't you introduce our guest formally, since we just kind of jumped into it, and let's get into some meat and potatoes.
Now that we're like in 20 minutes into this thing, we might as well introduce Dr. Jose Cabanas. Jose is my dear friend who I've known. I was trying to figure out how long I've known you. I think you were a fellow when we met, potentially even a resident, because I'm old.
Yeah.
But Dr. Jose Cabanas is the current president of the National Association of EMS Physicians. Also, though, deputy county manager. Is that the right position name right now?
Chief medical officer for
Chief medical officer for Wake County, North Carolina, which includes having oversight over Wake EMS, as well as their kind of whole public health apparatus and a bunch of other stuff. And as you all have guessed, previously was in Wake before, and then in Austin, and then back at Wake, and kind of all around great guy. So Jose, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking some time to come talk to us.
No, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your kind introduction. No, it's really, I was looking forward to this. So thanks so much for the invitation, and I'm glad we can make it work.
So, with Mike, it was kind of fun. We talked a little bit about like how he got started in EMS and his time in kind of doing native medicine, Native American medicine, and working on a reservation as a primary care provider, as well as an emergency physician, and just kind of his evolution into EMS. And so we have a couple of interesting topics to talk about, but like, let's, where was Dr. Jose Cabanas born?
So certainly, obviously I was born, raised, trained, educated in San Juan, Puerto Rico. So I really grew up in San Juan, and I was involved in EMS at a very early age, like many of our colleagues and friends in this amazing field. I started as an EMT, and I'll share something that a lot of people don't know. So my first job in EMS, I was a 911 call taker, and it was I was one of the best jobs I treasured, and it was my first opportunity to get involved in EMS. Lots of stories about that experience that we probably need more than what we have here at time in the podcast. But that's how I got involved and really connected with our industry, our specialty at an early age. So certainly got involved early in the late 90s as a 911 telecommunicator. I had some time with the Air Medical Service in Puerto Rico, and then I was also involved in my rescue squad, and sort of grew up in the EMS sort of community in San Juan. And then certainly, got connected, got passionate, and decided to want to go to medical school with the sole purpose of being an EMS physician, even though at the time there was no
Not that many.
clear definition
No
of
such thing. Yeah.
right, like the way it is today. But that was sort of the purpose, and and here we are.
So when I was an EMS fellow, when I was a resident, the EMS fellow was Hector Alonso Serra.
I know Hector very well. Hector,
So,
yeah.
So
I don't know if he's watching this, but I haven't talked to Hector in a while. But I know Hector very well. Hector knows me. I believe he was faculty, I think, in the residency program that I trained when I was a field EMS, clinician. So I believe I was an EMT at the time. So I remember seeing Hector, just kind of wandering through the ED, and obviously he was very actively involved with some educational programs at the time in the island. So I knew him from those experiences. But yeah, no, Hector's a fantastic, great guy. I sometimes connect with him on Facebook. I haven't talked to him in a little bit of time.
Yeah, and he came to Pittsburgh to do his EMS fellowship, and he left Pittsburgh as a freaking ginormous Steelers fan.
I do know that about him. He's a very strong Steelers fan. I have seen him with the shirts and the whole paraphernalia around the Steelers, and yeah, so that's unquestionable.
So what was it at such a young age that what about EMS and sort of helping people? Why do you think that resonated with you so young?
Wow, that's a deep question, and it's actually goes back a little bit. So I folks that know me more detail, very challenging upbringing in when I was growing up. And one of the things that I connected with that I think was very influential in my life, I was involved in scouting through many years with some friends of mine in school. And this may sound like cliche, but the exposure early to sort of the basic medical aid support sort of experiences was very influential for me. And then I connected with some mentors at that age, which actually was very sort of instrumental with my upbringing and keeping me sort of focused and thinking about future things and things that I wanted to do. And one thing sort of led to the other. And so and obviously sort of my grandmother raised me, and so in a lot of those exposures, I think she kept me very sort of structured and pushing me to do things, and all those things together sort of helped me sort of connect. I also remember my grandmother had a lot of medical issues, and I remember I was at a young age. My first experience with an EMS professional, a clinician, was when she was very ill and I had to call for aid. And I remember still today sort of their circumstances and who came to the house to sort of help. And at that time was not a 911, it was a 7-digit number. Mm-hmm. So at that time you had to remember sort of all these numbers. So I think that interaction also was influential in a way. But all those things together sort of what drove me in this career.
Yeah, that's pretty wild, because I'm sure, growing up and we've heard stories before that, folks that, really found themselves at a fork in the road. And if they didn't have those mentors or somebody like your grandma, your life could have been completely different. Right. And who knows what you may not even be here. Right. I remember what was the comedian that was on here, Ritu, a few years ago? I don't remember his name.
G Wade.
Help me out. G Wade. He kind of talked about that, right? Like you get to these points in your life and it's either gonna, looking back, could have really went, a way you didn't want it to go, or sometimes it does and you find your way back. But it's I love hearing stuff like that.
No, I mean, I could spend hours on this, but I've been blessed of, a lot of people at different stages in my life have been very instrumental in sort of mentorship, guidance, support, encouragement, and helping you sort of find your path. And that's why I believe that all of us in positions of that we exercise leadership, we also have to pay that back and support others in that same way. So absolutely 100%. Without that sort of support, mentorship, the it's not the same.
Cool. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So how did you end up in North Carolina?
So interesting story there. And we could do a podcast about story. I have plenty of stories, but
stories are good. That's what we're here for.
So I love stories.
So interesting. I started my residency training, and I'm not even like, halfway or a quarter of my intern year, and I'm already trying to figure it out. How do I get to do an EMS fellowship? I mean, and this is like, so I start connecting, sending emails around, trying to, find people. So I connected with Jane and others, but I remember obviously connecting with Jane, and Jane said, well, let's talk, kind of a cold email. Hey, my name is Jose Cabanas, and I'm kind of interested in EMS. And I remember she said, well, let's connect when you're getting closer to your third year and maybe see where you at. And I remember that before I made that follow-up connection, Jane reached out to me like at that time when I was getting into third year. Mm-hmm. And then when I did interviews and went around and met Jane Brent, I decided that the path was going to North Carolina. So my family and I moved to North Carolina in 2008 to do my fellowship.
Yeah, and Brent was there. Brent was the Wake EMS medical director at the time, right?
Yeah, he was the medical director and kind of transitioning to being the director. And and he was here, and Paul was here as well. And I was Jane's fourth fellow. And the rest is sort of
so Brent, Paul, who else was in front of you before you?
Trip.
Trip, yeah.
Brent, Trip, Paul, and myself, and now we're in the 20s, so I will have to spend some time here figuring out the order of sequence there. No, more than 20.
Yeah. Trip's a good guy. He's still the state EMS medical director, right?
Yeah, he's still the state medical director.
Good. Yeah, and I think you and I crossed paths probably around that time when you were
2007, I think.
Yeah, I was already. I did 700 years on the NAEMSP board, so I was already on the board at that time. And
we all do.
Yeah, I know. They keep pulling you back in. So, yeah, and then you finished your fellowship, and then you stayed. I can't remember if you stayed at Wake for a while or if that's when you went to Austin.
No, I did. I did stay in Wake for a while. So Paul transitioned to take the job in Austin as medical director.
Right.
And then
I remember that very well.
I'm sure you do. So lots of stories there. So, and then I ended up working for Brent as deputy medical director here. And I was in that role until 2011. And in September 2011, I transitioned to Austin to be deputy medical director there to help Paul with a number of things that he was working on at the time.
Brent was really crabby about that, by the way.
I'm not sure we wanted to see this part.
You know how when Brent gets mad and he gets like that red spot on the top of his forehead? That he was like Brent Myers mad.
There's a lot of stories behind that one. And JC, who may be watching this, also was involved in that.
He was on earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, JC.
Roll call, Jay-Z, if you're there.
He's around. I just saw him in the chat. So that's and when Brent was there and when you were deputy, that was when Brent did, and Brent and I have talked about this on the show too, but made a change to the structure of Wake EMS at the time as to sort of who was the director, right?
Yeah, Brent was a sort of a, Wake EMS over time, under Brent's leadership underwent very significant transformation, transitions, everything in a great way. But Brent became obviously the department head or the director of the agency during his tenure here. At a point he was medical director, but then there was, I forgot the year, I think it was 2010 actually, or 2000, no, 2009, I think he transitioned to be the department head as in addition to the medical director, and he stayed on that role until 2015, early 2015. So Wake EMS was one of those agencies that was characterized where it was a physician-led kind of model, from a executive standpoint. And I transitioned into that role in 2015 when I returned from Austin. So I was the director and medical director at the same time. So it was kind of the same structure. Very few agencies in the country have that model. There's always different pros and cons, but yeah, Brent was sort of instrumental in that transition.
Yeah. It is an interesting model. I mean, I think that physicians are not necessarily great administrators but um but I think that it does send the message that this is a medical enterprise, right? And that we're about taking care of people.
Yeah, that is correct. I mean, it's sort of, it's trying obviously there's a lot of things, of why and thinking around that approach, but it's the patient is at the center of every decision that is made in the agency. And doesn't mean all agencies don't do that, but it's an approach that sort of tries to magnify that in a way.
Yeah.
And how do you think about things? But certainly, obviously, we all in the industry exist because we're here to take care of patients. But it's a different approach, and like you said, there's all kinds of pros, cons. For Wake, it really was helpful, and it was been instrumental and made significant contributions by having sort of that physician-led model.
What and then now you've kind of worked your way in to be the CMO for like the whole county, right?
Yeah. So obviously, with like a lot of many communities, COVID sort of came up, and many communities.
COVID? We don't know anything
You
about that.
you remember about that?
It's
been a
I don't
while.
even remember that.
So certainly the conditions around COVID, like many communities, Wake EMS was transitioning into a strong support for the county in different fronts, right? Testing, vaccinations, operationalizing things, that kind of thing. So the team here was very instrumental in making a lot of work with other folks. And certainly, I was able to provide some support besides sort of my traditional, EMS responsibility. And I think over time, we all learned that COVID magnifies some significant disparities and significant sort of lack of connections and things. So it was felt like having a sort of physician leadership in a way that connects a lot of these things in a more centralized manner, and the county was needed. And so I took on that additional responsibility. So I transitioned into more of a county management role, but with a sort of a clinical lens, and also to oversee all the community health and safety programs, including EMS. And certainly the department head role transitioned to a non-physician that reports to me, but it's a different sort of structure. And then but I still remain the medical director for the system.
Mm-hmm. We've you talked about disparity in care, and we've had that theme on this podcast sort of previously. Jamie Kennel's been on at least once, maybe twice.
Twice.
And he's done a lot of work in disparities, and some of the work I do. I'm on a couple task forces around EMS and disparity, but it was very interesting. I guess I had two questions about that. One, when you say that COVID magnified some of these disparities, what did you see? What are some concrete examples of kind of how disparities were magnified by COVID?
Oh, absolutely. So, as you all know very well, and I'm sure a lot of our folks watching or listening to this at some point, I mean, we all as clinicians or or the places that we do work for our communities, we are aware of the challenges that a lot of our most vulnerable have to work through in a lot of fronts. We know the disparities around access to healthcare, the social determinants of health that influence the health of a lot of folks in our communities. And I think a lot of those things that we know about and we were trying to do work about were magnified because of the conditions that came out of COVID. Access to food, access to reliable shelter, access to healthcare, those barriers that prevented some of the folks that were at more risk with the pandemic. You have to redesign systems during the conditions of COVID to try to ensure they were able to receive access to testing, vaccination, and so forth. So those socioeconomic, but also social terms of health, context that we know were already barriers for a lot of our folks in our communities. And we all know that minorities and members of our community that are most vulnerable, there are already disparities that we were aware about. Just the conditions with the pandemic magnify those and brought additional light and attention. And I think it made even more important to try to bridge those by connecting systems and connecting entities doing this work. And I think applying a clinical lens to that provides additional added value.
Yeah, outcomes driven, right?
Yeah.
Mickey Eisenberg, measure and improve, and being outcome driven. And I think when you talk about disparities, I think unfortunately people can have a little bit of sort of political backlash about it. And I think that the way to turn that around is just to be outcome driven. And it's like, I have this outcome that clearly shows that this particular group has worse outcomes. And we can talk about if it's politics or not, but at the end of the day, our job as clinicians is to figure out the care we provide and figure out how to improve it. And if I know there's a group of people that have a lower cardiac arrest survival rate, I need to figure out if there's something I can do to improve those outcomes, and focusing on those outcomes and improving them as the goal, rather than focusing on whose fault is it, I guess, is one way to approach that.
Right. And I do believe that EMS physicians are the physician for the community. And if you all look at a little article that I wrote during COVID with Jane and some other colleagues, it was trying to reflect the different aspects where EMS physician got actively involved that are non-traditional role for EMS doctors. But I do believe that the contributions that EMS physicians bring to the table are sort of the doc for the community. And I think COVID allowed that to be, get more attention and shed light on it.
Yeah, cool. And then the other question I would have on this, since we brought it in, was NAEMSP has really kind of grabbed, and Mike Levy, it was when Mike Levy was president that it started, but my gosh, last year's program really had a lot of diversity and equity, which was really ballsy doing that in Florida, I might add. But I don't know if we're allowed back, but the productivity of NAEMSP's activity around this topic in the last couple of years has been really pretty phenomenal. So yeah, talk to me a little about NAEMSP's role in all this and kind of where we're going as an organization.
Oh, absolutely. And thanks for bringing that up, Ritu. NAEMSP, we're, all engines charged. We're doing amazing work. We're very busy, but we have an amazing team that has been very thoughtful and have been very active and passionate and ensuring that we are doing all this critical work around DEI and in our specialty. And in my job, and I know the board's job, is we are very supporting them in sort of in that work. So our DEI committee has been phenomenally instrumental in all the great work they're doing, and there's more coming. So our conference in Austin, which is in January 8th to 13th, it's going to be a phenomenal conference, and you're going to see so more about the work, the education, the research, in a lot of topics, but DEI remains a very core thing that we want to make sure we are highlighting in our conference and in the work we are doing, and there's more in the pipeline.
So we did DEI in Florida. Now we're going to do it in Texas. That's pretty good.
Well, and we before Florida, we were in Texas, if I'm not mistaken. No, right? Or San Diego.
Yeah, I think you were.
I think we're
Oh.
yeah.
Well,
So
we were in California too. We were in doing DEI in California is easy, but
right. No, but I think it's even more important, right? So we as an organization, and we believe that it is important that as clinicians and as leaders in our specialty, that we are facilitating conversations that we need to have within our specialty, but also providing the education, the content, the information, and sort of putting a magnifying glass on things that we really in medicine need to address and need to work on, and we're committed to it. And one of the things that I share with our chairs when I took over as president is we need to do more into putting a magnifying glass also on taking a role in public health, taking a role in addressing social determinants of health. We are the frontline clinicians of the community, and we see all the effects of the circumstances. So we need to be sort of at the leading edge of trying to build solutions and help our members be prepared to manage in their community.
Yeah, I think instead of getting frustrated, let me just say one thing. Instead of getting frustrated with our call volume, we should be advocating for the people we are going on calls for, so that they can have the tools to reduce the call volume. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was just going to say, I think when in the midst of COVID, right, I'm thinking like golly, March to, and again, I'm just throwing dates to, let's call it March of 21, right? So that year, to your point, Jose, EMS was on the front line. We were doing all the work. We were seeing the patient. We were triaging. We were not taking them. We were taking them. We wanted that seat at public health. We got it. I was thinking to myself, thinking back to, the days we spent organizing these, the vaccination clinics in these giant parking lots and doing hundreds of vaccinations a day, and thousands of these things, right? I think in the midst of that, one of the sort of lights at the end of the tunnel was people in EMS thought they finally see it now, right? We are critical to our county, right? We'll just leave it at that.
And when shit goes down, they call us, right?
Exactly, right? And no matter what shit it was, in this case, it was, a pandemic. We were there, answered the call, did amazing work all over the world, right? But specifically, I think of our little county or our little state, we're the ones leading the charge. But I think the light at the end of the tunnel was that EMS would be elevated in the eyes of decision makers and politicians. And I don't know if that's happened. Do you think that's happened? Because I really thought that too. Like, we're saving the day. Like, they have no idea. Now they know. But do they remember that? Do you think? I don't know.
That's a great question, Mike, and a great point. I believe they do. I think, like you are all said, when something's not working right or goes bad, we always show up, and it's in our DNA. We're just going to show up, and we're going to do an awesome job with whatever circumstances we face, because that's just who we are. And I think you can make the argument that some communities have noticed it more now than they were before, how critical it is for our EMS clinicians and our EMS system to be prepared, be ready, be equipped, be resourced adequately, because when things come up, they'll show up and do a great work. And I think others may have not captured that to the extent they should, but I know this. I know as folks in leadership and folks that we work with in our roles, we need to make sure that that story is not forgotten, and we have to make sure that we bring it up, because it also helps those communities or those sectors of our specialty or our communities that may not remember because it's been now 4 years. We have to do our due diligence of, you know what, let's make sure we don't forget about how critical our EMS workforce and our EMS clinicians are, because we just saw the great work they did at the most of challenging times of our community.
Very well.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine a scenario in which, at least in the situation that I was sort of in, that any of that would have ever gotten done if it hadn't have been for multiple fire agencies, EMS agencies, medical directors. Like, I don't know what they would have done. I mean, I honestly do not know what would have been done if it wasn't for EMS. So, I mean, that's just one example, right?
Yep.
Where Chu looks flabbergasted. What's wrong over there?
I look flabbergasted?
He's all like,
I'm just resting.
I was on the soapbox there for a second.
I love it. Anyway, no, it's all good. Okay, we got to say it. Heads up CPR.
Oh, that's a weird transition, but we made it.
That's a kind of a. When's the race? Is it tomorrow or is it? Because I feel like it's like a curve.
On Sunday.
It's a tight,
we have a couple days.
Turn. Yeah. So yeah, I heard. I mean, well, go ahead. What do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead, Ratu. Talk about it.
Well, apparently, since rescinded, my understanding is some fire chiefs thought it was the standard of care for cardiac arrest management. And that created a little bit of activity around your presidency.
It did. It was a little bit busy this past few weeks. Last 2 weeks 2 weeks to be exact. No, I think you're all aware, and for folks that are watching this, the podcast or listen to it, as you all know, the Metro Chiefs, the Urban Forum Metro Chiefs, sort of put out a statement that used the words standard, widely accepted standard of care for sort of head up CPR and for blood transfusion in the field. And certainly, as you all know, I said in communication to our members and publicly that, we had significant concerns about it. And obviously an organization that is not a clinical guideline body writing organization putting out a statement about what is the standard of care, which, by the way, it's a legal term, not an actual clinical term.
Right. And it's the name of a podcast.
Oh, it's the name of the podcast. I did learn that today.
A good podcast.
So that was, highly concerning, and we express our concerns. I express, my concerns on behalf of the association, and certainly I'm grateful for the open dialogue that I had with our colleagues in the fire service and in leadership. They were very helpful, and I think we were able to share sort of our viewpoints and sort of ended up where this was sort of rescinded and able to rectify what I believe was wrongly communicated and with a lot of concerns that I'm happy to expand, but that's I'm glad that we were able to have some good conversation with some of our colleagues in the fire service and in leadership, and so I appreciate their open conversation, and here we are.
So to sort of, maybe you're listening or watching and you have no idea what we're talking about. Basically what this is that there is a group of fire chiefs from Canada, Mexico, the UK, and the US. And every year they get together at this thing called the Urban Fire Forum. And they essentially released 5 papers that are basically documents that were focused on a range of topics, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll just name them off real quick. It was climate change. Mm-hmm. Cool. Establishing pre-hospital transfusion of blood products as a standard of care. Again, for EMS. I love that. Support for increasing efforts on mental health. And then first in responders, providing neuroprotective CPR as the standard of care. And then supporting research on firefighter reproductive health. Pretty cool range of topics. but I think, yeah, there was probably some miscommunication. I think Jeff Jarvis did a great job.
He did.
If you did not see his article in EMS One,
It pains me to say that, but
basically,
yes, he wrote a wonderful piece. It actually doesn't pain me. I love Jeff, but yes, he wrote a
yeah, exactly. And I'll throw a link to this in the chat if you're happen to be watching the live stream. But basically, it was titled "Not So Fast: More Evidence Needed," and I think this came out probably about a week after the statement from NAEMSP, talking about their concerns with that, and that was pretty good. Like I said, I'll throw a link in the chat here in a sec when I get done doing this. But basically, ended it with "We're not there yet," and because of this, it was premature to declare this intervention as a standard of care. So that's kind of the background. We did a little bit reverse. So we heard the NAMSP response, but that was basically what the dealio was.
Yeah, and I think and I laid out in our letter sort of high level concerns. I did have a follow up letter with an FPA about this, but when somebody sort of puts out a letter or something that says claiming that such clinical technique, approach, or everything, it's a standard of care, widely accepted standard of care, that's very problematic.
Yeah, why is that?
First,
what's the problem there? From their end, they're just trying to say this is really helpful, or this is, but why does that create a problem?
It works.
So if you all look at clinical organizations that are clinical writing bodies, if you look at how they craft clinical guidelines, by the way, it's a very structured process that is based on principles by the National Academy of Medicine. You don't see entities like the AHA, ACS, or clinical organizations put out things like with this language. They talked about treatment recommendations. They talk about level of evidence. And here's the thing: at the end of the day, the EMS physician medical director with his team and with the team of an agent, they're the ones who determine what is the practice of their community. And one of my biggest concerns with this communication, first of all, non-clinical organizations. So the way, the way that it is being, communicated by a non-clinical body, which hasn't vetted the evidence, and the evidence behind head-up CPR is observational, is very limited, and it has a lot of problems with it. And Jeff did a great job sort of explaining that. But at the end of the day, the decision about what is the best clinical sort of practice for a community, it is based on the EMS physician medical director. So when you write something that is trying, I'm not saying intentionally, but it's in a way providing influence for somebody to adopt something that is not based on evidence, it has a lot of problems with it, because we can have a discussion, a debate, a conversation about things a colleague may be doing that I just don't see it that way. But at the end of the day, it is a physician's responsibility in his practice with how he implements the best science and how he interprets. So this is why it was very wrong. And also it had a lot of problems with no authorship, who's, conflict. I mean, there's a lot of things with it that I just think was, inappropriate. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to engage, folks in the fire service to help us sort of work it, because it was just not, it was not appropriate.
Well, I just as just a member of NAMSP, no longer anybody important in NAMSP.
That's for sure.
That's right. But just as just a member, I have to say that you as president and the association as a whole step up very quickly, respectfully, and appropriately. And it was very appreciated by the membership, how you responded to that. I hope I would have been as respectful when I was president. I think I would have. But now that I'm not president, I got to say some shit. So, so I'm still waiting for the NAMSP statement on fireground operations and appropriate fire attack tactics, as well as whether a tiller versus non-tiller ladder truck is the most appropriate purchase for a fire department. Because it certainly felt to me like that's that would be the equivalent of us doing something like that.
No, I understand and appreciate your feedback and your kind of words. I always operate from the frame that, folks, there was, nothing willful, malicious of this. I think folks were trying to engage in very spirited discussions. They love innovation. They love sort of, the discussion about hot topics. I just think it, for some reason it got derailed into a path that shouldn't, right? Because I think it's always helpful to have folks come into a meeting or a conference, talk about innovation, things that are happening in the field, new research, new things. But you have to be mindful of what your role is as an entity versus putting out documents that are trying to influence change in practice. Even though you've not thought about it that way, that's how it came across. And obviously, I'm grateful for the support from a lot of folks that, provided me counsel, and everything else for this process, because, we want to make sure that we're sharing our voice and speaking out when we believe things are not appropriate and okay. And in this sense, I'm grateful for a lot of folks who were able to help us sort of work with this, and grateful for the folks on the far side who help us sort of understand our viewpoints and that kind of thing. So I think it came out to the right conclusion.
Well, again, your leadership was appreciated and outstanding, and just more in another great long line of NAEMSP president leadership stuff.
Well, thank you.
Let's
maybe tie a bow on it.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna talk about the sort of the things that followed, right? And that was kind of their position, rescinding their position on that, and just to give them sort of fair shake. The executive secretary Otto said that although medical professionals played a role in crafting the papers, they acknowledged the apprehensions expressed by members of the broader medical community regarding the inclusion of terminology such as standard of care and other language typically associated with medical guidelines in these papers. It was never our intent to cause confusion, rather provide guidance that would stimulate important discussions with the EMS community. The aim of the UFF, which is the Urban Fire Forum position papers, is to contribute to the ongoing dialogue between metropolitan fire chiefs and their local medical directors, who are the final medical authority surrounding these practices.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was their kind of response to the rescission. Rescission? Is that a
rescission?
Is that a word?
Yeah.
Rescission? Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. I think we got the message.
Anyway. Yeah. Exactly.
All right. So to get a little more, I don't know, somber, serious.
Yeah.
It's been a tough couple of weeks for that. So like I said, I was on the board, NAEMSP board from 2000, I think from 2000 to like 2019 or 2018, something ridiculous, or 2020. I spent a portion of my time on the board with Brooke Lerner. Okay, this is hard. Many of you know Brooke passed away last week. And she was an incredible influence as a EMS researcher, as a professional member of the board, on NAEMSP's board. And, you put out a wonderful statement about Brooke and her passing. She had a pretty crazy fight with, was it pancreatic cancer? I can't remember. It was cancer. So yeah, I just wanted to give you a few minutes to talk about Brooke and kind of what she meant to all of us that were touched by her brilliance and down to earth brilliance, like, just the nicest, most just one of the nicest, most genuine people I've ever worked with. But absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I had the I first met Brooke with at my first NAEMSP conference. I was still in residency training, I believe, at the time. Yeah, Brooke, big loss to our specialty, our association, and the broad EMS community. Brooke, very special, very kind soul. You met Brooke, and you can have a conversation with her about whatever EMS topic, and somebody who was starting in EMS and sort of thinking about some of the topics you're passionate about. Brooke was always sort of able. You can have a conversation with her, but she very kindly gave you feedback, ideas, thoughts. Also, Brooke was a mentor to many of our colleagues that have built phenomenal sort of careers in our field, and so her legacy and her service was characterized by honor, distinction, and commitment. I mean, a lot of folks may not have this level of detail, but Brooks' research body was very, 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 instrumental in the development of pediatric emergency care, in trauma guidelines that we use today, and how we structure things today. And I remember sometimes talking to her about, the trauma, guidelines, and trying to help better understand some of the thinking there in triage. I mean, her body of work was very robust, very impactful, and her legacy is something that we as EMS physicians, as clinicians, and folks working in the field, we got to keep it on, and we got to pass on and keep going, sort of that dedication to mentorship, service, education, and meaningful research that change our standards in EMS medicine.
Well, she built a career as an EMS researcher, and that's really hard.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I mean, we're an underfunded research in general for emergency care and especially EMS care, but she was able to build a career out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, phenomenal. And obviously, we, I know, I mean, everybody love connecting and love working with Brooke, and whatever stage of their career, where it was a medical student, a fellow, and even her national service. It was just a big loss. But I extend our condolences to family, friends, and loved ones. But I know she would like us to be happy and celebrating in a way, and certainly we definitely are grateful for her time with EMS family.
Yeah, we're better because she was here, and while I too extended my condolences, and we can sort of mourn her lossing, but we should focus on celebrating the fact that we got to be with her.
Yeah,
because that was, I mean, for me she was just it was just a life-changing relationship. She just one of those persons, lit up the room, just funny, engaging, and brilliant. And the best way to remember her is to go to NAEMSP.org and click on the link for the Brooke Lerner Research Fund. It was really important to her that we fund this, so that it can be utilized to help fund other researchers, non-physician researchers in particular, who are wanting to build a career in EMS research. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that tells you, her character. She wanted to continue in a way that role of mentor, and being able to support other upcoming researchers. So certainly, anybody who wants to board her research fund, that's the goal. The goal is to continue that journey of building up that next generation of researchers in our field.
Well, thank you guys for sharing. I mean, I didn't know her. I didn't have the opportunity to get to work with her, but sounds like just a wonderful, wonderful lady.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, so we've been at this for like an hour.
Yeah, I mean, we're just over an hour, which ain't bad.
Time flew.
That time went by like pretty quick.
Well, and then we had our massive preparation time before. So
Yeah,
we
add that
read this
in.
for like an hour and 5 minutes. But
Man,
I don't know. Is there anything else, Jose, that you wanted to hit upon?
I just want to share. Obviously, NAEMSP conference January, the hottest ticket in town that is upcoming January 8th to 13th. It is NAEMSP's 40th anniversary.
That's right.
So think about that. NMSP is going to be 40th years old, and it's going to be a big gathering, big show. We have like 14 pre-conferences. We have all kinds of content, high-end research. We're also going to be celebrating our new FAEMS fellows for the association, which is around 72, 75 this year, if I'm not mistaken. So, it's going to be a big event. Come to Austin, register. It's all open. Get your hotel room quickly because they're going like crazy fast.
And y'all can't stay at Mike's house.
I got room for one.
Well, we can Airbnb
if you want
Mike's
to sleep on an air
house,
mattress.
or we can Airbnb my house. But and also if you register for the conference, and when you show up, there's going to be a special edition of a 40th anniversary challenge coin that will come with that registration.
Oh,
so it is one once of a kind. So we need you all to register and show up, and you're getting a little breaking news here. So feel free to register, get registration, because it's going to be a very special celebration at the conference. So I cannot wait to see you all there.
I am looking.
And if not, we're coming to Mike's house and we're going to have a party there.
Yeah. Hey, you're welcome. You're welcome to come over here. We'll make it happen for sure. Yeah. If nothing else, and I'm sure being in Austin and with Brent and all that stuff, I'm sure we'll have some kind of a thing at ESO. So I'm sure we can host a happy hour or something like that. People want to come check out the office and say hi, and see where the sausage is made, and that'd be kind of cool. So
the great magic is being done on ESO. It's great. It's great.
Yeah,
it's going to be a big conference.
That's right.
Great keynote. We have several new awards that we're going to give in this year, including the Nancy Caroline Award, which is for education and mentorship. And we have other sort of ways that we're going to recognize the great work that our members do every year. So it's going to be a very special meeting, and we're going to have a 40th anniversary keynote, separate from regular keynote. It's the program committee is pulling all stops. Is going to be a thing. So show up.
I love that. I'll tell you the EMS show of the year. Yeah, I would say the EMS show
just won a national championship, so it'll be even better.
Maybe it'd be interesting. But anyway, what I was going to say was EMS show second shift. We've always been, obviously with Root2's connection and being a member of NAEMSP, we've always been a huge supporter of the work that the organization does. We try to get people on here to talk about it. Obviously, we get to the conference or the meeting and talk to people, but if you are not you do not have to be a physician to be a member of NAEMSP, right? So go check out the website. You can be a professional member. It's totally worth it. You get the journal, you get, there's just a lot of benefits to it. I worked on I think it was on the communications social media team for a while I can't even remember all the people that were on there, but it was awesome. Right. And I'm just a paramedic, so you can totally get involved. So go to NAMSP.org and check it out. There you go. I have two things. One of them is a bit of a breaking news, and on kind of on the same note that you were talking about, but I just found out that one of the medics I worked with in Multnomah County passed away.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
I'm not sure when, but I just saw a post on it. Ernie Leslie was amazing guy, great paramedic. But he was so much more. He was a balloon, like a hot air balloon pilot. He was an audio engineer. Like, I remember stories, and he worked the night shift. And I remember he pulled me out to the ambulance, and put a CD in the CD player, and he would, you know, it would be some random prog rock band that I've never heard of. And he's, you know, telling me how they're, you know, mixing the audio and doing all the stuff and stories about, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but it was somebody like the Backstreet Boys or NSYNC or whatever, one of those boy bands had just done a concert in the UK or over in Japan or something like that. And they sent him the audio files to master them so they could publish them. Like that's the level that Ernie was at. And he was just an amazing guy. He was involved in so many things. And boy, he's going to be missed. I wish I could get back there for his service, but rest in peace, Ernie. Man, that's a tough one. I love that guy. And the last piece is Rob Lawrence sent me a package. It was addressed to Max Verstappen from Lewis Hamilton, and it was a pair of Prodigy socks. So he told me that on the next EMS show, I had to show the Prodigy socks that he sent me. I'm surprised that he got
see
delivered.
Rob when I go to Vegas.
I hope you get to see him. But anyway, that's it. That's what I got. Anything else, and I'll get us out of here.
It's all good.
Anything?
All great. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Jose, thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
it was great to see you and catch up.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. So on behalf of Dr. Ratusani, Dr. Jose Cabanas, thank you. Mike Verkest, you've been watching and listening to the EMS show. We will see you on the next one. You guys all have a good night. Take care.
Hey, thanks for listening to the EMS show. Let's continue this conversation. What do you say? Check out the official Facebook page and Twitter feed. The EMS show is a Firedog production.